All right, guys. Hey, and welcome to this edition of Sellers Training, right? So we're going to be looking today at sellers' priorities. And I really want to open up the door of why we're doing this, okay? When I think about sellers' priorities, what I am saying in this space is that most of us are not doing any action or activity in discovering what a seller's priorities are. Now, let's not confuse seller's priorities with what this says over here, which is needs analysis. A lot of us will do the needs analysis. Actually, let's talk about what we're all good at. We are all good at talking about our job and what we're good at within our job, right? What your unique value proposition. I am better than everybody else at marketing. I'm better than everybody else at selling homes that didn't sell the first time. I'm whatever that unique value proposition may look like. We're all in a discovery process of that, and we're good at talking about those things. And so I want to make sure that we understand that's not what we are looking at today. But it is a factor in what we're looking at today, because most of us will go in and we'll have the conversation right out of the gate about our unique value proposition. Some of us are good at the needs analysis. Now, some of us will get in and we'll start having some of these needs analysis conversations. Now, needs analysis is real simple. We're just asking all of the right questions to be able to get a response from our clients, our consumer, our potential consumers, to understand what is their need for selling their home. Now, obviously, there's a myriad of needs. We're going to be digging out some of the data points, and we're going to be digging out some of the emotional side of things. Okay, so now all of us are good at talking about what we're good at within the business. Some of us are good at digging out the needs and asking the right questions to our consumer. And then there's very few of us who are digging into the priorities. Now, all of this is going to be super simple, okay? So what I'm going to talk about today isn't going to feel like rocket science, and yet if we take and put the application of it into our businesses, I think you'll start to discover how to create raving fans that will refer you out, that will not just come back to you to help them sell their house again, but they will consider it almost offensive if any of their friends or family use anybody else other than you to sell their home. Because when we really get into the priority section of things, what we're doing, we're being selfless, and we're listening to what they not just need, but what they are prioritizing, so that the experience is great. It's great for them. And it's kind of like that golden rule, right? Do unto others as you have done unto you. Really, the priority side of things is about the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they would have, how am I saying this right? I'm messing it up. Treat others the way, sorry, the golden rule is to treat others the way you want to be treated. The platinum rule is to treat others the way they want to be treated. And when we can really do that, we've really broken through, and we've created a space that everybody feels safe at a high level, right? When I understand why you want to sell your home is great. But when I understand your priorities, it changes the way I interact. And now I'm not the person doing the business to you or for you. I'm the person walking alongside of you. And that's really at the core of what we all want, is a tribe that we're with. We don't ever want to be looked down or talked down to, and yet a lot of times that's what it feels like when we're in the presence of professionals. And real estates are a high-level professional. So today we're going to be looking at sellers' priorities and how we can understand the needs analysis process to get to the priorities, right? Now, here's what most of us do. There is curiosity within almost every single seller that will fit into these three categories. They're going to be curious about price. They're going to be curious about time. And they're going to be curious about ease. Their curiosities are, what are you going to price my home at? How long is this going to take? How easy is it going to be? At the core of who we are, those are our three basic curiosities within selling our home. Now, we as real estate agents know that. We understand that these are going to be the big pieces to the puzzle for the outcome of our conversation. The challenge is most of us walk into these conversations and we just start with the conversation. We start just going, okay, so I know already that you want to talk about price, time, and ease. So I'm going to have the conversation around price, time, and ease. We're just going to start there. And here's what it looks like to almost every single person that we're talking to. We start going in this direction. We go price, and we start talking price, we're going to have to talk about the market. Inside of the market, we're going to have to talk about the social impact of the market, the economic impact of the market, the micro macro impact of the market, right? And so when we're talking about the micro macro, so you understand what I mean, here's your neighborhood, that's macro. Here's your section, that's micro. Your neighborhood is awesome. I'm not disagreeing with you, seller, that your neighborhood is not amazing. It's an absolutely amazing neighborhood. The challenge is that they're widening Grant Road, so you are backing up to where they're about to annex land from all sellers or all people who own homes right there. So if you're selling your home, a buyer is going to realize that your property just became less appetizing to the rest of the neighborhood. So I understand you have the best, most gorgeous house in the world, and yet macro micro has some challenges in there. So that's what I mean by that when we have that micro macro. And then we go into the comps conversation. Who's like me? Who do I need to be like? What's my competition? I go into home condition and I'm going to start looking at how do I market your home properly so that then how it is currently can be the most beautiful option for anybody out there looking. And then we're going to talk about the sliding price scale, right? If we do this, then we may be able to get this. What's the market telling us? So now we're going back to a market conversation. We start to dig into time a little bit, and they're just interested in speed. So that's a real simple one to be able to go back and forth with speed. But speed is going to come into everything that we talk about. Now we get over to ease. How easy is this process going to be for me, Mr. Agent? Well, we got to price it right. We got to market it right. We got to do documents, expectations, comment. Hopefully I have overly stressed you out in just listening to what I'm saying in this moment. Because unfortunately, this is what we sound like. If we're not careful and cautious about what we're doing in our businesses, this is absolutely what we're sounding like when we walk into a presentation. In all honesty, this is why our presentations are like 2 hours long. I want you to consider anything that you would go and sit in for over an hour to get talked to about something that you want. Unless it was just absolutely mesmerizing. I know personally I'm not going to sit and listen to somebody without zoning out and going in my own direction or creating all these random objections for what's happening or random questions for what's happening. My mind is going to trail. And so for us to be able to get out of that process, right, out of the process of regurgitating this when I sit in front of you, I really need to dig into needs analysis first. And the way I do that is to ask a lot of questions, right? Needs analysis is about asking questions. And so when I walk into any appointment that I'm going to sit at, I'm going to be looking for 3 very specific things. I want to look at time, I want to look at sense of urgency, and I want to know why. And here's what's really neat. If I go in that order, if I find a way to go in that order, if I craft the conversation to go in that order, well, then they all begin to unveil themselves. And so everything that I already knew that I wanted to talk about is going to come out in the process of me asking the right questions in needs analysis. Now, I'm not saying that many of us aren't doing this. Here's the thing that I watch that most agents aren't doing, though. And so if you're guilty of this, it's our opportunity to make the adjustment, okay? So when I'm looking at our goals for selling, and I'm looking at time, and I'm looking at our goals for selling, I'm looking at urgency, and I'm looking at our goals for selling, and I'm looking at the whole why, guess what my first question is? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what are your goals for selling this home? Now here's the reality. You and I both know that there's more than likely going to be a smart aleck answer that comes out of that, or very cliche, easy, something simple to be able to ask, because there's a stage of vulnerability. If we haven't really jumped into much conversation yet, and out of the gate, I want to know your goals for selling your home. You may not reveal all of it, but it's going to be my best place to get into the conversation of opening up the doors of really why you want to sell your home. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what are the goals for you selling your home? Well, we want to be in this school district. What are the goals for selling your home? Well, we're looking to retire. What are the goals for selling your home? Well, our family is expanding, and so we need more rooms. These are beautiful things, and it's simple for them to answer, right? So if I'm looking into, and I go into the needs analysis, what are your goals for selling this home? I want to craft that conversation to get into time. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what are your goals for selling your home? Well, we need to get into the school district. Awesome. When do we need to be there by? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what are your goals for selling this home? Well, we're retiring. Awesome. What does the timeline look like for that retirement process and selling your home at the same time? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what are your goals for selling this home? Well, our family is expanding and we need to find a new space. We need more room. We're out of storage, blah, 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 blah. Great. So what is the time frame for which you want to be able to get into your new space and your new family? Asking the time questions gets them into the response of like showing you where their timeline is. Now that doesn't necessarily give us an urgency section, but it gets us closer. So Randy, we need to be there in 30 days. Randy, we need to be there in 100 days. Randy, we need to be there in 20 days. Okay, awesome. So let me just ask you, just for instance, if we were not able to get there in that 30-day frame, what would happen? Now I'm asking a question that's a little bit level deeper. It can be dangerous because they're like, well, my hope is that we don't do that because that's why we hired you to sell our home fast. No, I understand that completely, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and my goal is to get you there. And yet we don't know what's going to happen to the market. Surely you could understand during the times of COVID, some things have happened to be able to put a stumbling block on people to sell their homes. So sometimes things happen. I want to make sure that if something happens, what do we do next? So what would happen if we're not able to sell your home in 30 days? Well, we would be fine and we could keep it on the market longer. We could keep it on for 60, right? Or Randy, like that's really not an option for us because as soon as he retires in the next 70 days, our income gets cut in half and we are over our budget. Well, that's a different conversation. That's a prioritizing conversation. So now we can get into the prioritizing side of things. So understanding what's looking at for that, and we can start, we're getting closer to the priority section. Okay, so now I've got time. Now I've got a little bit of sense of urgency. You see what I did is I morphed my conversation into the sense of urgency. All right, so tell me, you've got to be able to get there. It's got to happen by this. So when we're looking at the whole process of selling your home, what's the reason for going in that direction? Because I understand the whole time frame. Well, what's the reason for where you're going over there? Oh my gosh, it's blah, 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 blah. And they start to open up a little bit more of the door of their feelings. The reason why I do this is that if I've put a little bit of pressure on the time and the urgency really early because those are heavy conversations, and then I can come into that why, and usually why is a happier conversation, or I can frame it to be a little bit happier. So I'm very methodical in the way that I want to have that conversation, and that's the reason why. Okay, so I know that I've spent a little bit more time than most of you were willing to walk with me through the idea of needs analysis, and yet we have to start in this space because the fourth question that I'm going to dig out after the why is, what is important to you during the selling process? Okay, so now I've opened up the door and I've probably had a lot of these conversations already. And so now I'm going to say, what is important about this selling of your home? So, I'm sorry, what is important to you during the selling process? Essentially, what I am now doing is I'm getting into the priorities conversation. When we open this door, we are opening the door to a lot of opinions on how they believe we should do our job. Okay? I want to make sure and be real about what's happening. When we open up this door, we're opening up the conversation of how they think we should do our job, which is a dangerous space. And yet, what a relief to understand their priorities so that I can be the one to either direct or redirect, right? So it's not happening to me in real time. I understand it on the front end, so I can direct or redirect. I can be in control. Don't have to be controlling, but I can be in control. And what if I actually can hit these things at a high level for them and create that raving fan process? And that's really what I'm looking for. Because most of the time, sellers aren't off their rocker with what their expectations are for the selling process. They're more than likely merging some stories that they've had. They're looking at the market and crafting their own version of that story. And they're usually just looking at customer service in general. And so if this is really their frame for how they're going to answer this question, there isn't much that I can't do or do a version of to make sure that they feel satisfied in the process, okay? So that's why I want to ask this question. This is really what I want to be able to dig into. And when I look at this and I'm looking at their priorities and I'm asking them what's important to them about this selling process, what I'm really creating is this 10. You see on the screen over here, I'm creating this 10 moment. What would it be like at a 10? What would it be like at a 10 plus? What would it be like at a 10 plus plus? And so this is a document that comes out of a toolkit for a training called Win with Sellers. And Keller Williams does this training all the time. It's a Keller Williams training process. I would highly encourage you, if you are in and around a Keller Williams office and this comes to your world, if Win with Sellers comes into your world, I would highly encourage you taking this class because it goes through a really expert level of being a selling agent, right? Being a listing agent for people and how to do all of the things in the best practices ways, and versus like how we conglomerate practices, it'll be the best practices of all the stages of walking with a seller through the process. So again, this is a document taken out of the Keller Williams. I've isolated this one moment for you guys just because I see the importance of getting into the priority conversation, right? And so if we look at the priority conversation, it's really simple. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the very desirable and 1 being not desirable at all, what one thing could happen to make the sale of your home a 10 for you? What is important about that? All right. And you've heard me say that a couple of times. What is important about that? That's, the big thing. What is important about that? That's a really great question just to put in your bucket anyways. And yet when we go through this, it's really on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very desirable and 1 being not desirable at all. What one thing could happen to make the sale of your home a 10 for you? Buckle up and be ready for whatever their answer is going to be, right? Because if their answer comes back and it's, I need to sell and I need to know that I will not have my life interrupted, you now know how to craft your plan for selling this home to be absolutely singularly focused on them, which is customer experience and customer service at its highest level. I know this sounds like a duh statement, and yet we tend to not ask this question because it gives us a little bit of that vulnerability that they're going to tell me how to do my job, and I've got to come forward with the ability to do that. Now, what happens when it's irrational, right? What if they say, well, I need you to sell my home in 1 day? Oh my gosh, if that's your top priority, if that is your one priority is to sell your home in 1 day, I can tell you absolutely how that's going to happen, right? Because they think I'm just going to toss this answer out. You're going to massage it. They're trying to put you on the fence, right? There are certain people who will try to put you on the fence. And it's like, awesome, I'd love to sell your house in 1 day. What's important to you about selling your house in 1 day? So you've put them back in a little bit of a defensive mode, right? So be ready for that. They're going to be defensive, or there'll be humor. So there'll be some sarcasm in there. And yet it gives us the opportunity to have the conversation that if that is truly a priority, then we can show them where the solutions for that sits in the market, in the pricing, in the marketing, in the structure, now I am in control of the way the conversation is going to happen, and it's not blindsiding me. Once we get into the process, and they really wanted to sell their home, they said 1 day, but what they meant was like, I actually want to do it like in 15 days. I want to be reasonable, but I want it to be super fast. My priority is fast. Don't interrupt what's happening now. I've got a vacation and I don't want to worry about this. I don't want to stress out about this at all. My priority is super fast. If you could do this fast without interrupting my day, I'm going to be ecstatic and you will be my real estate agent for life. Second question. Also super easy, super simple. What one thing could we add to make the sell a 10 plus plus for you? Right? So we're asking a second level question. And here's what's really interesting. This is why we really ask that second level question, right? I want to go 10, I want to go 10 plus, I want to go 10 plus plus. If I were to do an exercise and I were to ask you, hey, I want you to think about what could we do to market homes better, right? You're a real estate agent. You'd go, all right, I got some ideas. And you start jotting those down. And I say, oh, wait, I'm sorry. I want 12 ideas from you. You're going to immediately, probably 4 ideas are going to come out, 5 ideas, 6 ideas will come out real fast. Well, really what I wanted was to be able to learn how we might be able to market homes better. And to do that, it's going to be a little bit different. We don't have different conversations until we start digging in a little bit further into the list. And around that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you're starting to see some real creativity come out because we begin to look into our brains. I want to perform this activity and I want to actually write down all 12. Well, I've got to get super creative in the process now to be able to actually answer your question. And so when we go in and we start asking priorities in this same fashion, I've asked you, well, what would make it a 10 for you? Out of the gate, real simple, easy, cliche answer is going to pop out and it's going to be good. I'm going to ask you what's important about that so we can get beyond the cliche and get into the importance factor. But that there is their priority. There's something about that 10 moment that is the priority for them. And if I can perform at that level, I create raving fans. Now, when I ask them for the 10 plus, they're going to have to go back into their brain and start to dig out. And their subconscious more than likely will spit out an answer. And it's going to come out in line with where their 10 was. So now I'm lining up and I know what they said was a 10, but I know what they meant was a 10. Well, when I go to the 10 plus plus, what they've really done is said, Randy, the way I feel most cared for absolutely in anything is that if you would do this. Essentially, it's like a luxury spa, not having to guess what you need. A luxury spa being able to say, hey, what do we do today to make you excitingly happy about your process with us? And then you'll come back with us over and over and over again. What would you do? And they tell you everything that well, I would do this. It's like, awesome. Hey, I want to tell you about our brand new package that we have. And it is blah, 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 blah. And they just regurgitate what your answers are. If we really do this right and we create the priorities section of this process, if we really do this right, understand what you've done in your consultation. I didn't regurgitate what I'm capable of doing because that's a duh statement. I should be saying those things in the process. I've asked you your needs. I've crafted my conversation to understand where your needs are in the process for selling your home so I can align with why you need to sell your home, your goals, and I can be the advocate to keep us on journey, right? Needs analysis is about understanding where my advocacy is. And then when I shift that conversation into priorities, now what I've become is the one person who understands you best. And you will not just come back to me, but you will make sure everybody who you touch in this world will always use you as their real estate agent. When I look at priorities, it really is. It's about creating this raving fan moment. Simple to create a prioritizing questions. And when we do this right, we now have been given the playbook for success with each one of our clients. Whenever we sit down with them, we know what we are capable of doing from the task of real estate agency, but they give us a picture of what makes us the best real estate agent to them. The platinum rule coming back around. Treat others the way they want to be treated. And then they will always come back to you. Our goal with finding the priority is to create raving fans. And all of us want raving fans in our business. So here's the deal. If I'm looking at coming into a training, I always want to make sure there's application to it. There's always got to be application. And so I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. 1, evaluate your listing process. When you go into a presentation, do you start with just the conversation about what you can do and how you can do it? Now, I know a lot of us will say, well, no, I start with the CMAs, I start with the process, I start with the tour, I start with questions. And yet, are your questions just to get the process rolling so you can talk more? Or are they questions to really understand who they are? That's a needs analysis. So stop, evaluate what you're doing. Number 1, evaluate what you're doing so that you can understand, am I asking questions or am I telling people what to do? Second thing, evaluation. The very second thing that I'm going to do, I'm really going to look at what are the 3 main points that I want to make and how can I turn those statements into questions so that now my client is the one bringing that to conversation. Now they are the author, they're the creator of the conversation. It makes a much stronger connection. And then the last thing that I'm going to ask you to do, really look at, am I asking questions to get into the priority moment? Am I understanding the prioritization of what's important to my client? And if you're not doing that, just use these simple questions that we have. How do we get to a 10? What's important about that? How do we get to a 10 plus? What's important about that? How do we get to a 10 plus plus? If you do these three things, I promise you, your listing presentation will turn into pure magic, and you will start talking about your referral business is off the charts, because really what you've done is helped people to understand how they can go through this process with the right price, with the right speed, and making it super easy for them. You've answered the things that you wanted to just by simply running through and understanding them at the core of who they are. I hope this helps you guys. I always want to be able to bring content. If this does, by all means, subscribe. When you subscribe, you'll be connected to every time I go live or every time I bring a class into my YouTube channel. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate this. I hope this really helps you. Go be amazing. If you have any questions, by all means, email me anytime you need. So you guys are amazing, and thank you again so much.